Hello and welcome to Model Train Fun. Today we're going to look at how to run multiple units or double traction or consist, so basically multiple locomotives in the same train set. In order to do that, I got two different locomotives here. One is the Märklin 36160, which is a Vectron, the Holland piercer. And the other one is the Märklin 36181, which is the standard look of the Vectron in the Deutsche Bahn. These are the older generation of the Vectrons. Märklin actually just announced a facelift or an update to these ones here in the summer items 2021. These are actually both from the what I would call the 2017 series of the Vectrons. So these, Märklin introduced the Vectron in 2017, I believe, and then they have been producing it all the way up till actually 2020. So this is one of the older versions, this one here, the 36181. But the Holland piercer here was actually a new item of the 2020. When running multiple units or double traction, one of the most important things to make sure of is that both locomotives must be in perfect sync. What does that mean? Well, if this locomotive is driving faster than this locomotive over here, then this one would be pulling this one and this one would be dragging. That could overload either both the locomotives or one of the locomotives. So we need to make sure that both locomotives basically are running at the same speed. We also need to make sure that if this locomotive is braking, then this one will be braking as well, and they should be braking with the same deceleration. The same thing when they accelerate, they should accelerate in the same way. So basically the trick for multiple units or double traction is to make sure that the locomotives are in complete sync. Now, what is the challenge here? Well, each locomotive could have different engines, it could have different gearing inside, it could have different decoders. All of those things would actually give you a different behavior of the locomotive. So the tip I would give you is buy locomotives from the same manufacturer if you intend to drive them in multiple units or double traction. Also buy the locomotives in the same series, so to speak, such that the models themselves are as close a match as they can be. Of course, that also means you kind of limit yourself to having locomotives of the same kind. So in this case here, I got two Vectrons, one that's a Swiss one and one that's a German one here. Now, if I wanted to mix completely different locomotives, you have to be very careful and test it out before you do that. So the locomotives I've chosen here to try to put in as multiple units in double traction are both Märklin. They're the same basic series, the Märklin Vectron. These are the 36160 and the 36181. And I chose these because, as I understand it, you would see these in real life. It's from the same manufacturer. Same series, so there's a good chance these will drive really well together without damaging the locomotives. So in order to see how successful we can be with the multiple units or the double traction, let's examine the manual. So I got the manual here for the Holland piercer, and I got the manual here for the German version of the Vectron. So let's first go and look at the functions here, or the description itself of the locomotive. So here we have the English one. If I just shift between these two, you'll see very, very little actually changes between these two versions. You basically see it's the name here set at the factory, but also the address set from the factory as well will change. So that looks promising. So there's probably a good overlap of the locomotives. The next thing I would do is go look at the spare parts list. So we have the spare parts list here for the Holland piercer. Let me just find the same one for the German Vectron here. So we have that here. And if I just again shift between them, if you look at it, looks very similar. To me, it actually looks like there's a good chance that these will work. It doesn't look like there was any differences at all, which is promising because hopefully the gearbox is the same, hopefully the engine is the same, and so on. If we go to the next page here that has the spare parts list and compare this one, we click a little back and forward, and you actually see there is a difference here. If you look up here at the decoder, this one will actually change. So you see here it's a different number. Okay, so different decoders in there. Wonder if that means something, and what could it mean? By the way, you will also see down here Schienenraumer. There's also a different here, item 15. That's actually just a piece of plastic on the model, so that I wouldn't be too concerned about. So I'm really only concerned about the decoder here. Let's go and examine the functions. Let me find the English version here. Here we have it. So where do we have the other one here for the German version of the Vectron? We have it here. So let's just click between these two, and here we actually see there are differences, which also was indicated in the spare part list. So if we look here at the Holland piercer, it has 16 functions. It has the operating sounds here on the F1. Okay. If I look at the German version of the Vectron, it has 15 functions. But it has the operating sounds on F2. So there are some differences here with the decoder. However, I truly believe that we can succeed in running these in double traction. But at least what we need to be aware of is when we turn on the operating sounds, that's at least 2 different buttons. So this is something we need to think about when we set up the multiple units in the Central Station tree. So the locomotives get automatically discovered. I can pull up in the red tab here at the bottom and see. And you see it's already got one of the locomotives, and now it found the other one. All right, so now I got my 2 locomotives here. So I'm happy. That's the good thing about the MFX. You just basically need to add them to the track and they will automatically appear. In order to make a consist here, what I need to do is I need to go into edit mode. You can see I'm already in edit mode here. If I was not in edit mode, it would look like this. If I click edit here, and then I can go into create MU set, which basically means a multiple unit set or a double traction in this case. So I create one here. You need to give it a unique name. So I'm just gonna give it the name Vectron, and then I'm just gonna call it HF for heavy freight. You could also call it multiple units. Maybe actually that would be a better word to put on. So MU, okay. I accept this. And now you see there's a black element over here. That's where I can add my units to. So the rule of thumb is the first unit you add is the one that will show all the function keys of the multiple unit set. So I'm gonna drag the Holland piercer on first, and then I'm gonna drag the regular German version on here. And then you see now I have a consist here consisting of 2 locomotives, or I have a multiple unit, sorry I should say. I click OK. And then if we make this one slightly bigger, you'll actually see we have the multiple unit down here. I can actually drag it onto the controls. If I open the controls here, you'll actually see that it's a Vectron multiple units, and it has actually inherited all the keys from the Holland piercer. We can verify that by pulling over the Holland piercer on the other side. And you can see those are the same keys as the Holland piercer we got here. If I pull over the German version of the Vectron, you can see it has a completely different set of keys. So now the good thing is we can control all of this either as the multiple unit, or we can control each of the locomotives by themselves. So now we can control it as a consist. So if we look at the locomotives on the track, if we go over here to the consist, which I put on the left-hand side of the central station here, if I click on the lights, you will actually see that both lights turns on. I don't know if it's easy to see on the video, but indeed they actually do. You can also see here to the right that indeed it actually did turn the light on for the German Vectron as well. If I click on this one over here for the German Vectron, you see the light actually goes off, and hopefully you can also see on the video that the light actually goes off. And if we go and look at the Holland piercer here, you'll actually see the light is on. So in this case, if you manipulate the settings individually, of course the consist or the multiple unit over here will not show the correct. But what I could do is I can turn the light off and I can turn the light on again, and then they're all in sync. So we go back and we look at the German Vectron, and indeed we see they are in sync now. All right, we got the locomotives on the track here. Now before I actually connect them together, you see I have them with a small distance apart. I want to check that they actually do indeed have approximately the same running characteristics. So I'm looking for, do they run at the same speed? Do they accelerate? Do they decelerate in the same way? We examined the manual before, and we saw that it was same motor in there, or same engine. It looked like same gearbox because it was same spare parts. There was some difference in the decoder. So all in all, there should be a good chance they actually work together. By the way, in the introduction, I said that the Vectron, the German Vectron, was the older version of these two. That is actually incorrect. I looked it up. They're actually both from 2020. So even better, there's a really good chance they will work together. Now, before you even attempt anything, make sure that both locomotives will be going in the same direction. Now, how do I ensure that? Well, remember the Märklin trick. There's the slider below. Forward is the direction of the slider. So in this case here for the Holland piercer I got here, on that bogie there, that's actually where the slider is. I put that up in front. The same thing for the German Vectron. On the bogie over here, that's actually where the slider is. So there's a good chance these will drive in the same direction. However, better double check, maybe drive them individually before you start them for the first time, just to make sure. So let me just slowly try and set the speed for these ones here. So you see I'm driving them. They actually look like they are in perfect sync. I'm giving them a little more speed here. You can see now, keep an eye on them, because this is where you could end up in trouble. Are they getting closer together or further apart? You can see they are actually getting closer together now. I reduced the speed a little, so you can see when it's, well, actually now it's out of the camera, I see. So they're coming into the camera here. Now they are actually very much in sync. Let's try and stop them here again where I had the track from before. So if you noticed now, the little piece of track I have here, before the coupler of the Holland piercer was at the beginning of this track, and the coupler of the German Vectron was at the end. But if you look at it, this is actually pretty decent. They are not really changing distance that much. I did notice, however, when they drove a little faster, it seemed like the German Vectron was catching up compared to the Holland piercer. So that's definitely something we need to think of. Let me try and give him a little more distance. So I will back off the German Vectron. So I will just back it up just a little here. Now it's a bigger distance because I want to try and actually drive him a little faster. So in this case, now you saw me back it up. I remember to change the direction again because we want them to drive the same direction. So let me just try and give him some speed. It looks like they're keeping the distance. I'm giving them quite a lot more speed. It looks like they are maintaining the distance. Maybe the Holland piercer is a little faster than the German right now at this speed. All right. They're coming to the station. I'm gonna make a break. So I basically just set the speed for 0. You saw they kind of glided with the same speed. However, all in all, now they have a much bigger distance. However, I wouldn't be too worried about this. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. The world is not perfect. They actually do keep the distance in a pretty good way. So I think there's a good chance they will run together. You see, I changed direction as well. They still maintain the distance. Approximately, right? So you see they are actually probably as close in sync as you can ever get two different locomotives. Maybe the only way to make more sure that they are in perfect sync is to buy exactly the same locomotive twice. But even then, I would suspect due to manufacturing variances, they won't be exactly the same. All right, so we saw that the two locomotives actually drive nicely together on the track. Now the other thing we discovered was that it was different decoders. We looked at the functions, so actually they have different sound and functions on different buttons. So the first thing to ask is what do we really want to do? Well, first of all, to me, if I look over here at the consist on the left here on the central station, I truly don't think I want the light to be turned on both locomotives at the same time. In the prototypical scenario, so in the real world, it would only be the first locomotive that has lights on. It would only have headlights on. It would not have light on the other end. The second locomotive wouldn't have lights on at all. So to me, there's no need to control the light on both locomotives at the same time. So nice feature, but I don't think it's really necessary. If we look at the horns, well, the horns, if in the real world, I would imagine that it's only the horn of the first locomotive that actually sounds when the cab engineer in the cab or the locomotive driver actually hits the horn. However, this is entirely up to you. You could configure it such that when you hit the horn, then it would actually trigger the horn on both locomotives as well. However, one thing I really would like to do is to make sure that when the engine sound turns on, then it actually turns on both locomotives. Unless, of course, one of the locomotives is turned off and just being carried in the consist. But if it truly is a heavy train and they both need to work, then both engine sounds would be on. So remember down here in the locomotive panel, you can scroll as well. So if we have the two locomotives here, I have here the German Vectron, which I have on the right hand side. You see the engine sound is actually on F3 over here, and there's some kind of buffer sound here on F2. If we drag the Holland piercer up, you'll see the engine sound is actually on F2, and the F3 actually has a horn, so they clearly are different. So what I would like to do is to go and change the German Vectron here such that it gets the engine sound on F2 in the same way as the other one does, such that when we look here on the left hand side on the consist, that both of them it would be triggered when I click on the engine sound here. Of course, this is not really necessary. You can also just run it as you see fit. Go on each of the individual locomotives, set the lights, set the engine, and so on individually. You don't actually need to use the consist here. However, you need to use the consist when you set the direction and when you set the speed, right? So in order to go in and alter it, let me just click these away. So this is how your locomotive panel normally would look. You go to the edit here and you say edit locos. You get a green button here, and now you can see all of them actually comes with a little X here, so I could delete them if I wanted to. So you go in and out of edit mode by clicking on this edit here. You can click edit locos again and you come back. So now I want to change the German Vectron. So I click on this one. All right, here we have the German Vectron. And remember, we can do many things. Now, if I just go over here and I click on the F2, you see the sound triggers. However, I want to change it. I go to setup, I look. Oh, there's something here that changed. So if I click on this F2 over here, what happens? Well, then basically what comes out here is I can change the icon of the F2 button, but not the F2 button itself. All right, so we have to search on. I can go into the configuration here. When you go into the configuration, it will immediately read all the values from the locomotive. So what I'm demonstrating here actually works for MFX locomotive, so it's relatively easy to remap functions and read all the parameters from an MFX locomotive. It's harder if it's not an MFX locomotive. So we see it's reading, it has all the blocks in here now. Now none of these talk about the functions. See, there's motor, sound, formats, there's MISC. Let's see what MISC is. If I look at MISC, yeah, that doesn't look like anything we're looking for. What we actually have to find is the burger menu up here. So when we click the burger menu, you see it says mapping. So we click on this one here, and here comes a big function for mapping all the functions, or a big display for mapping all the functions. Now I just been into this, so it didn't read it, but if it's the first time, it will actually read all of this in, so you can see it reading more functions from the MFX decoder as well. So in this case, these are relatively new MFX decoders. By the way, this is the latest version of the Central Station 3 software, so it looks like this. I seem to recall it looks slightly different for older versions of the MFT. All right, so which one was it? Actually, I see here now that I used the wrong function numbers because I forgot the first one is 0. So if 0 is the light, if 1 here is the engine, or is the buffer sound, if 2 is the engine sound, but I basically wanted the engine sound instead of the buffer sound over here. So that is F1. I'm sorry about that. I click on the F1 here. You see everything changes. There's a lot of things you can set up here, but in essence, you see F1, it will play sound 16. Whenever you press that button. I can click on F2. You will see that that one will actually play the running sounds. So basically what we just need to do is reconfigure F1. So instead of sound 16, it's the running sounds. However, let's do an extra check because there's a little configuration key up here as well. We click on this one here. If you noticed here, each function can either be switching or momentary. If it's switching, it means you turn it on or off. If it's momentary, it will basically just go on and automatically go off. And you see here that the buffer sound is basically just a temporary, momentary. So you click on that one, it sends it out, but it doesn't keep the function on, but it does that for the engine sound. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure F1 is actually a switching function. So I change that to switching. I hit OK. So now it's a switching function. All right, so we have the F1 changed to the switching function. Now I want to change the sound, and you see now it says the sound 16. So we want to delete the sound 16. So I hit the minus over here. I hit OK. It gets deleted. You see it's no longer in the list. Here next to the sounds, now there's a plus. So I can click the plus. And now I want to choose the function I desire or the sound I desire. So you see they're all here, sound 1 through 16. However, the one we wanted was the running sound. So I just hit OK. You see the running sound is here. I can hit OK. So now we basically configured the F1 for the running sound. I could go over here on the info. I did not change the icon. Oh, let me go back and do that. So I go back to setup. I hit the icon here. And then we basically just want to change that to the running sound or the engine sound instead. So we go find it over here on the icons. There's right now on the light tab. Sorry, let's go on the sound tab. And we actually see here is the operating sound, although that doesn't entirely look like the icon it has below. Let's see if we can find it somewhere. Oh, I saw it. Here it is, running sounds. So you have to search. It might also, remember, be on the other tab here, so the sound 2 tab. So click a little around in the tabs till you find what you need. But it was here on sound 1. I want it to be the running sound. By the way, noticed in here, I can also change between the switching, the momentary. I can also set a duration and so on. Right. Now I can test the function. So I click down here. And you can hear the engine basically starts. Excellent. And what might be hard to hear on the video is which locomotive it is, but it is indeed the correct locomotive. We turn it off again. It turns off. Excellent. So basically what I did was I changed F1 so it became a different sound. I changed the icon as well. I did not change F2, so in essence that works the same way now, but this is entirely up to you how you want to do it. So I hit OK. And now if we open the panels again, what you will see over here on the right hand side is that the German Vectron now indeed has updated its functions. So now let's try on the consist over here to the left, and let's click the running sounds or the engine sounds. So let's click on this one. And indeed, both of the locomotives start up. I guess you can hear it on the video too. The sound is a little more intense. And we can turn it off. Now notice if I turn on the sound for the German Vectron over here, that will indeed be by itself. And now if I click on the consist, we should also get the Holland piercer turned on. And you heard both of them turned on in the same fashion. I can turn off the German Vectron again. And I can turn off the consist, which will basically turn both of them off, but one of them was off. Now don't forget to go out of edit mode so you won't accidentally edit them. But we achieved what we wanted to. We actually mapped the functions so they fit the consist a little better. Yippee! If this video helped you, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the little bell icon if you would like to get notified about future videos. Enjoy!